our walk-on music.
It's the welcome music, yeah.
Little Western theme here. I bought this a while ago from Doris Raymond, who owns The Way We Wore, and I had no other occasion to wear it. So thank you, Bill, for giving me a reason to pull this out of my closet.
My pleasure.
For a while, I just had it hanging. It was so divine. So I'm in my hippie Western mode, I think.
Love it.
Kind of 1968 Western. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Bill before we head into this. This is Bill Peace. He's also known as William Peace. But if you don't remember which is the preferred designation, you can always call him Billiam. He answers to any one of those.
We'll say anything.
Bill is a remarkable designer, an interior designer who has worked for over 3 decades, really establishing a very sophisticated version of Western interiors. We all have certain visions of what that might be, but he has pulled together a look that is identifiable as in the West, and yet it's very, very sophisticated. And it's not an easy lift, so I really admire what he does. The fact that his name is Bill Peace, and he got to name a book Peace in the West, is just really cool. I love
Lucky guy, for sure.
I can't say Stuart in the West. I mean, it wouldn't make as much sense. So Bill is about to launch Peace Rustic Luxury as he, kind of expands his vision of the world with Holland Sherry, and has an extraordinary collection of fabrics and textiles and rugs and leathers and all marvelous things that I think transcend really what it means to be in the West. These are just beautiful elements that can be incorporated into any interior. You don't have to have a project in Montana. Just saying. You've designed homes all over the West, from rustic cabins to modern ranch compounds. You blend local heritage with luxurious materials and art, and you've been very much honored. In fact, I presented an honor to you at the Schutzzy Awards.
Yes, you did.
And by the way, they've invited me back. They made a terrible mistake in inviting Alexa Hampton to host last year, and I hear it was dreary. But don't tell her I said that. She's lovely. So I had 4 years in a row of hosting the ICAA Schutzzy Awards, and I'm coming back this year with Nina Campbell as my co-host. I'm very excited. Bill lives in Atlanta and Bozeman, Montana. Montana's a place also near and dear to my heart. I'm a city girl who I don't fish, I don't ride, I don't ski. I am more at home in a Prada store than I am on a horseback. But I love the West. I love Montana and Jackson. Oddly enough, you also own a few saloons, which I don't understand, except maybe it's just a better way to grab a drink, but the fact that you would take
that's how it started, definitely. Yeah. Was, we really liked this place, we should buy it. After a few drinks, and we decided we did it.
Just because you don't have enough on your plate, right. I gather.
Yeah.
I'm going to show a few images that when I said to someone, I was getting ready for this talk, and I said, tell me what you think of when you think of the West. And she said, the Golden Gate Bridge. And she said, Malibu at sunset, the beach. And she said, the Hollywood sign. And I said, no, that's the West Coast. What do you think of when I say the West? So, Bill, I know you can't see these images, but I think, and I think you think, it's the Wild West. Those are the images that come to mind. The bucking bronco and the cowboy. This to me, Buffalo Bill's Wild West, cattle stampedes, the stagecoach, the old, Western saloons, I'm trying to see what I'm seeing. This is a famous image of Jackson, Wyoming with a moose. And I got to see a moose last week in Jackson. It was pretty cool. This is Big Sky Country, Montana. And I know there's a lot of other West in the West. But these are the places that I know and you know, and that evoke what I think of as an image of Western interiors. There's also Western wear, and one of the great designers who really embody that style, Ralph Lauren. Loved this image. I almost wore a cowboy hat today because, of course, I have a few, but I didn't. Roy Rogers, there's the West as it's been featured in Hollywood. Hollywood really embraced the West and made it something that people wanted to aspire to. So here we have all the great Western stars, John Wayne, the Marlboro Man, who was used as an iconic figure for God knows how many years to sell cigarettes just by posing in this kind of masculine, idealized Western vibe. There's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Heart Be Still, just so fabulous. John Travolta, Urban Cowboy, which really resurrected a kind of
classic,
a rush towards cowboy wear and trying to adopt that kind of, tough Western vibe. Of course, different kind of Western. We've got Brokeback Mountain, which was,
It's a Western.
It's a Western, sure is. And there's some artists that I love who are known as Western artists. Maynard Dixon might be a favorite of yours as well. Richard Prince, a contemporary artist who's appropriated images of the West from advertisements. There's George Catlin, who is one of my heroes. George Catlin really, he immersed himself in the West in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and befriended the Indians and painted them with great dignity and respect. Frederick Remington, whose work I can't stand, but I have a client who has some Remingtons, and they're so corny. They're just so cornball. Western, classic log cabin. And now in Jackson and Montana, we've got the log cabin on steroids, which is it steroids? Steroids, which is really a shame because they're so ugly. And they kind of, they dismiss what is truly Western about the West. It's not what you do. This is a classic example of Molesworth furniture. Thomas Molesworth was a great craftsman of Western wear, Western furniture. This is also Molesworth cabin. This is a cabin by Ralph Lauren. Wait, no, that's a cabin by me. That's a log cabin that we just finished in Jackson, and I love being able to work in this in the spirit of the West. Not all my projects look like this, but when I get to do that, I think it's pretty fabulous. This is me on a horse. It's the only horse I really feel comfortable on, and you can see it has no back end. That's because it's in a friend of mine. Her husband owned a special effects studio, and so there's a dead body in the background. This horse, it bucks up and down. It was made for Hollywood stars whose the insurance companies couldn't afford to put them on a real horse, so he made an animatronic horse. I'm in fur and jeans and trying to look as comfortable as I possibly can on horseback. That's about as close as I'm ever going to get. I am finishing, and Bill is going to take over. I've blathered long enough. Oh, you don't get this.
I need that.
You don't get this. But let's see. So this is going to show you on the screen a number of images of Bill's work, which is truly inspiring. And I guess my first question to you, Mr. Peace,
Ask me.
Billiam, is how does a boy raised in Kentucky, based in Atlanta as an adult, become a man of the West?
It's a great story. Can't wait to tell it. So I grew up in Kentucky, and a wonderful place to grow up in the bluegrass. And I was around horses. I was around basketball and around plenty of bourbon. And so I found my way to Atlanta and started a design firm there. And I had a client from Oklahoma who bought a ranch in Montana. They were taking their kids, a really fascinating couple. They were young. They had 4 young kids, and they decided to take their kids on a trip around the world for a year and a half. And so they bought a ranch in Montana as kind of the welcome home present for their family. They knew their lives would never be the same. So while they were gone for a year and a half, my firm designed 3 buildings on this ranch. So I'd never been to Montana. I went out there specifically for this. Met a lot of great people, worked on the project for a year and a half, and just fell in love with it. I mean, when I remember getting off the plane the first time, I'm looking around thinking, I should have been born here. And I was born in a cool place, but I thought, this is it. And the more I was there, and I went often because there was no client to call on. This was in the early 90s. We had no real email. I think we telefax or something like that is how we would communicate. And so we met a great contractor who Madeline knows and has worked with Yellowstone Traditions. We worked with them and a great architect in Montana. And so we worked on this project. We continue to work with this family on it. So that's what took me there. And we ended up getting another project, and it became and has become a huge part of my business and my personal life. I've had a home in Bozeman for about 20 years. My oldest son now works for the construction company that we did that first project with. When he got out of college, he wanted to move to Montana, so he's living a big life. So that's how I found my way there, and it's just evolved into a fantastic part of my life.
Well, it's an amazing place. They call it Big Sky Country for a reason, and the first time you see it, it really takes your breath away, because the natural beauty of the place is it's something to behold. And there are still great swaths of land in Jackson and Montana that's been protected, and really represents a time and a period in this country when a time of discovery. So
well, it's so unique. You know, the United States is so vast. I was talking to somebody the other night from England, and we were talking about, you know, the difference in traveling around and what we do in the West. We can go from one coast to another. When you think about the difference in being the East Coast and the West Coast where we are here, drastically different. And right there in the middle, we have the Rocky Mountains. And it's such a special place. And the quality of light is different than it is other places. The way the seasons change, the way you can see, you know, as you say, the big sky is real. And you can see forever. You can see storms coming in like you can't in very few places in our country. Yeah. And there's really special things about it.
Yeah. Do you have any Western heroes? Did you grow up with Western heroes? Did you like Westerns, either make-believe or...
I think every little boy in America wants to be a cowboy until you really learn what cowboys do all day. But the concept of wearing a cowboy hat and wearing chaps and hanging out and, you know, doing that life, I think is a fantasy. And there's a romance about the cowboy that Americans have. And people in other cultures and other places in the world do too. Right. I remember years ago going to a little shop in Paris that was like a little cowboy shop. And they had cowboy artifacts. And these people were fascinated with the American cowboy. And so I think that we all kind of have that.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think we have such a regard and an obsession with the West?
I think that Hollywood's had a lot to do with that. That the old Westerns, that just, you know, everybody from the Lone Ranger to Roy Rogers and those kind of people, but Gene Autry, really old movies. Uh-huh. And there's just a fascination with the cowboy, and I think people just really love it. And
when you're out there, you must see people. You know, if you ever spend any time in Jackson, you see people who don Western wear, and you know they're like private equity guys that, show up in Jackson and they go to a Western shop and they put on the hat and they put on the boots and they really think they're part of that culture.
Well, I think there's a romance about the West that's been established, and people want to be a part of that. So even if it is a costume to them in a way, they're enjoying this, week-long fantasy of, I went to a ranch and I lived a life for a week. And
But this is not a costume. I mean, this is a costume for me, but that's not a costume for you, right?
no, I wear this pretty often.
Yeah. Okay.
I wear jeans and boots every day.
Right. You got the boots, and it's no Levi's, right? It has to be Wranglers. That's what I've been told.
Actually, I don't wear Wranglers. I wear another type of jeans
Okay.
that I really like.
Okay.
Naked and Famous. Have you ever heard of them? They're great jeans.
What are they?
Naked and Famous.
Naked and you know what? That leads me to a question. You're not going to, what a fantastic introduction. There's a project in the book that is called the Fish Creek Project. And there's a fantastic chimney and there's a pond. There is this beautiful pond. And I wondered if you'd ever been naked in that pond.
That's a cold plunge pond? And the answer is no, I have not. But my client gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day when he's out there. He's an East Coast guy, but when he's out there, he's up at 4 in the morning and jumps in that pond and gets his day started. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a hot tub beside it where I would find myself more
I see.
comfortable.
All right.
But he does the cold plunge every day.
Okay. Because I thought, God,
No, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you ride? Do you hunt? Do you fish? Do you ski? Do you do all that stuff?
I've done all that stuff, but the one that I do the most probably is fishing.
Uh-huh.
I gave up skiing a few years ago. I kind of decided I had hurt myself enough and didn't need to do that again.
Do you hunt?
Not really. I bird hunt every now and then in the South, but I'm not a big game hunter.
Uh-huh.
My son who lives out there is.
And
it's a way of life. Hunters they're very serious conservationists, and they mostly it's a tradition from family to family. And most of my friends who are hunters, they'll go elk hunting and they have that meat for the winter, and they take advantage of the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And just a way of life.
What do you in Montana and Jackson? Do you prefer the summer or the winter?
I love them both. I go there for work. Really, is how this all started. So time of year doesn't really matter to me, and I've kind of gotten used to the cold. I mean, there are days when it's 20 below. Well, I'll reschedule my meeting if it's 20 below. But if it's 10 degrees and the sun's out, it's very pleasant because it's so dry.
Yeah.
And summer's lovely. Highs in the 70s and 80s, no humidity, and fantastic long days. So
yeah,
it's
amazing. You'll see guys out there. I think the only time they have to stop work in the winter is when it's like, is it 10 below?
10 below. That's what YT does. 10
right,
below.
10 below. And if it's anything above 20, the guys are out there in like t-shirts. They think that's a perfectly balmy day. I like to wear fur, so it's a good place for me to work.
My least favorite time is the spring because it's mud season. One day it'll snow, one day it'll be sunny, one day it'll rain, it'll snow again. And
yeah.
That's no fun.
The shoulder season.
The rest of the year is fantastic.
What I love about your work is the fact that you incorporate European antiques into your Western interiors, and there's still most definitely a Western vibe and a Western spirit, and yet they're English and Italian and these fabulous European antiques, and yet they feel so at home there. Tell me about how and why you feel that resonates for you, and how you incorporate antiques like that into your interiors.
So that first project I was talking about that we did, and you'll see a slide of it that's in the rotation here, a cabin with a porch added onto it. That small cabin was a schoolhouse, a one-room schoolhouse that was on the property. And back in the, 50s or 60s, they determined that those schoolhouses were going to go away for the most part, started building bigger schools. And wherever the school was at that time, because they would move it depending on where most of the kids were. So this property had one of those abandoned schoolhouses on it. And so we took advantage of that and wanted to make that as authentic as we could. And so our clients had said, one of the things they said is, we would really like to have Montana furniture if we could, things from Montana. So we started searching, and there just really were not great historic pieces of furniture. So we started thinking, what else can we find? So we found American antiques. We got into European antiques. And so especially things like 17th century Italian pieces that have, you know, from Bologna and places like that. They're very gutsy. They're rich. The woods are rich. They're usually walnut, some oak pieces. But stylistically, they've got great character, but yet they have a rusticity about them so that they fit into these really rustic environments. And that kind of led us down that path. And so now, depending on what the project is, where it is, and what it is, we'll use antiques. Sometimes we mix with the more modern pieces. It's just a variety of things that we do.
But that's I think
love
that's
doing
what
it.
makes these rooms just resonate with such richness and warmth, that it's not just all of one thing or another. It's a fabulous mix of contemporary, antique, vintage, funky, whatever it is. That it's not just it's pulled together in a way that looks effortless, but I know there's a lot of effort there.
Well, one of the things we like to do is when we're doing a building, especially if it's a reclaimed wood, it's a cabin. I say cabin, it could be a 10,000 square foot cabin, but it's, we're using reclaimed hewn, reclaimed logs. We're using these materials that come together. And I love the idea of someone walking in and really not being able to tell how old it is. They're like, this feels like it's relatively new. This feels like it's from the 60s. This feels like it's 150 years old. And yet it's been a newly created building with the reclaimed material. So that's where I think the authenticity comes into some of this, of using authentic materials, wood and stone, which you'll see in a lot of these. Even if it's a more modern house, there is authenticity to the materials. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with the furnishings. It's the same sort of thing, that we bring these historic pieces in. And I love I mentioned the Bologna pieces from the 16th century, 17th century. These pieces of furniture are amazing, and they're easy to find if you get out and search.
Well, I was going to say, I know a lot of those pieces in that book because those were pieces that I looked at.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason,
from our buddy
Shane Roebuck in Atlanta, who's an extraordinary resource and a wonderful person with a great eye. And for whatever reason, I didn't get them. And it's like, oh, I remember seeing that in Atlanta. Do you enjoy the hunt as much as I do? Do you love the seek and ye shall find concept of design?
I do. I really do. And I've grown to love it even more in recent years. Shane, who she's talking about, is a good friend of mine, and I've traveled with him to Europe multiple times. I was there just a few months ago. And
wow, he's never asked me to go with him to Europe. And I thought we were pretty close, and I do a lot of business with him. Whatever.
Well,
okay.
You can come along. So we're able to meet with people, guys who are pickers, and they're out searching for things, and go visit dealers who are in cities, but also in the country. Go to lunch with somebody who we met at an antiques fair in Italy, and they invite us to their house, and in their house they have a barn full of furniture. I mean, those sort of things is when you really stumble in it and go, wow, this is great.
And do you always buy specifically for clients, or do you buy on spec and think, I know I'm going to use this one day?
Both. Mm-hmm. But more times than not, I buy it because I think I have a place for it, but I don't know for 100% for sure. Sometimes those pieces end up at my house if we really love them.
I know that.
And I say to my wife, Melissa, who's around here somewhere, well, there she is. I say, yeah, don't get too attached to this because it's for sale.
Even though it's your bed.
You can imagine how that goes when I decide, yes, we ought to sell that. She's like, that's my chair. We're not selling that chair.
I have way too much inventory for things that I thought I was going to sell.
But we have a few things in storage right now. But my last trip, I was buying specifically for a project we have coming up in Lake Tahoe. Mm-hmm. We're installing in a few weeks. And we found some amazing things there. Some I bought from Shane, some I found myself, and other dealers. And I was at Obsolete just the other day buying things for that. So I'm
The
putting Ray
best,
there.
the best.
Finding things for that same project. So
Yeah.
it's a really fascinating project, and so it's a good one.
I think you love what I also love, which is getting up out of your chair, going to find things. Whether there's a picture in my book, No Place Like Home, still available on Amazon, that of a vase that I found for $14, and I love this thing so much, and I sold it to my client for $14, and it occupies a full page in my book because it's about finding things and discovering like treasures out there
Yeah.
that you appreciate, and the act of hunting for these things is really exciting for me.
It is. You go to the antique fairs and you wander through one of these buildings, and I've done it many times where I wander through and think I've seen everything, and then I go the opposite direction, go back and like see something that's incredible that I walked right past this 3 times.
Right.
And the 4th time I notice it and say, that's the piece I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's really,
Getting to know the dealers, that's the other thing I've really grown to enjoy. And they all have stories, and they have stories on the furniture where they found it. And it's coming out of someone's castle or an estate somewhere. And, you have these great history, and that helps tell the story when it eventually ends up in one of our projects.
Oh, I think clients love that.
They love
Nobody's going to tell a story about the piece of furniture you found at RH.
Right.
It's all about bringing history and patina into a home that to me gives it its soul and its warmth.
Yeah. That's that authenticity that really carries through from the landscape, the nature. We're so informed by nature there. And we are in some ways everywhere we work, but if you're in a city, it's a different experience. But, when we're working in the West, and it could be, we do projects in Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, all throughout the West. We have some great projects right now in Idaho. And that's a very different landscape and experience of being in Montana or Wyoming. So you have this multiples where you still fringe on the Rocky Mountains, and you have lakes, and you have rivers, and you have all those wonderful things. But the sight lines are different of what you're seeing in your view corridors. So many times when we're working in Montana, Wyoming especially, we're really after the view. And so people are all about big windows, maybe sometimes too much.
Too many big windows?
Too many big windows could be a bad thing.
Seen that? Yep.
And a lot of times we try to soften these big windows with draperies, and the clients are like, we don't want to block our view.
Oh, I hate that.
And we've
I'm
learned
so
to navigate through that pretty well by talking about framing the view and making the view even better than it would be, and softening the view, not with distraction of heavy pattern or heavy color on the draperies, but it adds a softness and it frames this view. So
sometimes these houses that are so big and yes, they're obsessed about the view. First of all, at night there is no view. It's black.
It's black
out there.
Yeah.
And
reflective.
But you just need that little bit of a sheer, something woven, that little bit of softness that helps
Which you can
mitigate
find in
all
our
the
product line with Holland Sherry, Western Scotch.
That was a plug, right? There's a picture in your book of a 70-million-year-old dinosaur bone.
Yes.
And I need to know where to get that because I really want one.
That's
How do you
special.
get a 70-year-old dinosaur bone?
Well, you have a client who likes to collect all cool things. This guy is the project in Texas, and he's an oil and gas guy, so he's way into geology, so that's part of it. But he also has a large collection of airplanes from World War II. He has collections of automobiles.
So he's rich, right? He's like really rich.
He's got a little dough to spend and do cool things with. And he's a really great guy, interesting guy, and like anything that's kind of macho, he wants it. So he started collecting dinosaurs.
Macho.
And so that one that's in the project is probably 7 feet tall.
It is so. I wish we could pull that up.
And it came from northern Montana.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God! There it is.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. Isn't that spectacular?
So when he had a
70
warehouse
million
full of
years
all
ago.
kinds of things, and so when we saw that, it's like, that's the coolest sculpture I've ever seen. We got to have it.
Yeah. Well,
So
now I want
it looks great in the house.
The house in Idaho that's in your book is decidedly more contemporary than many of the other projects. Are you just as comfortable with that, a more contemporary aesthetic, as you are with homes that are more rustic?
Absolutely. I mean, before I started doing the things in the West, and we still continue to do other projects. So my firm does modern interiors. We're not really heavy traditional, not Southern traditional. That's not our look. But modern houses we've always done.
Leave that to Jackie.
Yeah, other people are really good at that.
Yeah.
But, it's really driven by the client, the location. The client who you're talking about, it's a couple who had a home in Montana at the Yellowstone Club. They had decided they were going to give up skiing and play more golf. So they wanted a place in Idaho on Geyser Ranch. And so that's where that property is. And so they had a really traditional, rustic, large cabin. They wanted something more modern. They wanted a different experience.
They wanted you.
But they wanted us, and they wanted it to feel rustic. So we used these same materials. We just did it in a different way, and captured. It's on Lake Coeur d'Alene, so the views are spectacular. And
but you feel that's just as easy for you. That's not a stretch for you to do more contemporary.
It's just a different experience, and challenging in a different way. This client was really involved in the project. She had done a number of projects with other designers. First time we had worked together, so she was
controlling. Would you say controlling?
I don't know that I would.
Would you say annoying?
She's semi-controlling. She really liked to be involved in all the decisions. And the good news is she had done it enough that she understood the process. She understood what our role was and what her role was as a client. And she just wanted to be involved. She enjoyed the process so much. So she didn't try to control us. She just wanted to be part of it, which was fun.
Okay, yeah. I'll take your word for it.
We've had clients who are the other way too, who do want it to be all about everything, every idea they've ever seen in a magazine. They want every one of them in one house, and that doesn't always fly. Right.
Those are the clients who I like to think that they imagine design as a contact sport, and they have to win every point. And that's...
Well, I think part of our job as designers is to educate people. And you ease into that and let them start to trust you. And we don't go in, bull in the china shop sort of attitude of demanding it has to be this way. We let it evolve, and finally,
I should take notes. Hold on. What? No bull in China.
Hopefully, after a presentation or two, we're good enough that they start to trust us.
Yes, it's...
And we all kind of get along and figure it out.
If it's not collaborative, then you're just a dictator. Yeah. You're a designer dictator.
You're doing a show house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love the project you did with Michael Ember, who's a fantastic architect based in San Antonio, very talented man. And the collaboration between the two of you, I thought was really, really unique, and spoke to place, to client, to architect-designer relationship, which is not always, it's not always a collaborative one. And I really love that project. And the interiors have just a marvelous collection of mid-century pieces. There's a Paul Evans piece. And tell me what's different about that house in terms of your interiors. What would you say is the difference in that project?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, Michael's an incredible architect, and I got to know him through Design Leadership Network, and we became friends. And he had a client he'd worked with on numerous projects, and it's the guy I was talking about earlier that collects. That's the one with the dinosaur in the house. And Michael said, "I think you'd be perfect for this." So he brought us in. He also brought a landscape architect in, Jim Hyatt, who's out of Colorado. And so Michael kind of created the team, and we all worked on this project for 6 years. It's in the Kill Country of Texas, large project on a big ranch. There's one shot in there, I think, that shows it's got a red roof overlooking a lake with it's white stucco. But that client was very open to us coming with unique things. We have a cocktail table that we bought from Maison Girard in New York, that it's bronze cocktail table, polished bronze, and rough cast bronze, combination of the two. The artist is a female who lives in Lebanon, and like he was all about, also he wanted to see options of good, better, and best. And 95% of the time, he would listen to me, explain them. We would show him, here's a good, here's better, here's the best. And most of the time he'd go, I don't see any way I can't have the best one. And I would say,
Very
yes, and
clever.
you deserve it, and I think you should have the best one. So that cocktail table is one of those examples. There was a $5,000 table, there was a $20,000 table, and there was a $70,000 table. And he's like, I have to have them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Love that in a client.
And you know, part of working with my team is saying that that's part of our obligation for our clients, is that we can't be shy to show them something special because they come to us for something special. And,
Yes.
and then they have the choice of what direction they want to go with it. And, you know, when I do that, sometimes people say, well, which one do you like? I said, I like them all, or you wouldn't have seen them.
Right,
So
true.
I'm not going to show you anything that I
That's
don't think
crap.
would work.
Yeah.
So this is about what you feel comfortable with. One is more special for sure, but all of them are great. So that's something that, you know, that's through our design practice. We've gotten better and better at that with really.
It's called salesmanship.
It is salesmanship. and people in our industry don't always like to talk that we're salesmen. We're all salesmen. You know, that's what we do. If we can't sell our
that's
idea,
right. That's,
then the idea never happens.
Selling a concept, selling your ideas, selling
Absolutely.
design, selling furniture. I mean, it seems so coarse and,
But it's,
you know,
it's how you succeed in our world.
yeah,
It's part of it.
yeah.
And that collaboration, back to that with Michael, that, you know, he created, we worked really well together between architect and interiors group. And there are things in that house that I honestly don't know where the architecture stopped and the interiors people took over, because we just feathered it together so well. And the collaboration was really good, also with landscape. So I think that house shows that. And there's such a unique architecture going on there, and unique furnishings and it all, and art, it all came together.
Can you tell us about a time when it didn't work so well, when the feathering was a little multi and, you know, I mean, you surely have worked with architects with whom you've maybe disagreed or clashed. Not every time is a marvelous marriage.
That's true, but it's really rare, and I think it's because I always go into it that we're not here to change your building. We're here to make your building better. And I don't always necessarily say that with the architect, but it's how can we work together for the client and give them the best thing they can have. One thing that always, you know, throws me over the edge is I see a great piece of architecture and I walk inside and look at the interior and go, what happened? How did this fall apart? It's such a great building, and the interior, somebody was wrong for the project. Or you sometimes look at a building and go, nothing special. You go inside and say, wow, what an amazing interior. So when you have that collaboration that works, from the time someone arrives at the property till they walk through, everything feels seamless. That's the goal.
Yes,
And when
agreed.
you can find that, and more times than not we do. And sometimes we have to get a little pushy on the interior side. And you know.
I wouldn't know about that.
And you know.
I wouldn't know about pushing.
And get the architects to see our way. That's salesmanship too.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's an image where there's a juxtaposition. It's a bathroom, it's a shower of Carrara marble and this very rough, funky, you know, craggy rock. And I think that's so brilliant. I love how you married the two of those. Do your clients always trust you when you present something like that? Is there a point at which you have to convince them?
Well, it depends on who the client is. I mean, I have clients who, and I'm sure you do too, that become obsessed about a little spot on their countertop instead of acknowledging these are natural materials and they're going to have a life of their own and they're going to change. So certain people are going to say, I don't want that natural stone in my shower because what if it gets mold on it, or what if it gets, you know, it just doesn't feel clean. Other people are like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard of.
Right.
I got to have it.
And did they, when you presented that, did they say that's the coolest thing?
And this is the same person who has the plunge pool outside that he gets in at 4 o'clock in the morning. He's like, all in on anything that's unique and special and part of the West. He's from Pennsylvania, and when he decided to have a house in Jackson, he wanted everything we could put at it that made it feel authentically Western.
Uh-huh.
And that house is not cliche cowboy in any way, but it feels Western.
Right. Well, I think that's a real distinction between being cliched cowboy, where it's kind of dressed up in a costume, versus something that feels appropriate in the West for both the landscape, the lifestyle, the climate, there's, and again, it goes back to being authentic and not just kind of donning a costume.
And most of the time, we look at those things as people who come into the West that when they want the true cowboy look, they're not authentic. We have a project right now.
There it is. So great.
Yeah, that's a great shower.
Yeah, I love that.
We have a project right now, and it's a 50,000 acre cattle ranch in Montana. And these guys are cowboys, and they live the life of ranchers. They have a big meat operation. They have a meat operation in Wisconsin, and they have this Montana one. And when it came to, we did a cabin for them first. Now we're working on the second building. Eventually we'll do the main house. We talked about art, and they want cowboy art. They want to be around it. They want their friends to come and visit. We're cattle guys,
right?
And we want cowboy stuff. So therefore, it's authentic for them.
For them,
it's not not posing as a cowboy. These are ranchers.
The real deal.
They're the real deal. And that's really fun because that's unique for us. Usually, it's somebody who's made a lot of money and they decide they're going to buy a ranch, and it's their
they're
retreat.
gentlemen.
It's their retreat.
Right.
It's not their livelihood.
Right. So will you put European antiques in this house?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. The cabin we definitely did.
So I'm going to ask you one last question. On a lot of your projects, I see bunk beds.
Yep.
And every one of my clients wants bunk beds for, they think they're, kids and grandkids and all that. Is there any trick that you have discovered to making the top bed of a bunk?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
You have a housekeeper who does that because it's terrible.
Yeah. It's impossible.
And we've also, the one thing we've done, and this came from the gals in my office who were at installations, and they're making the bunk beds, and they come out, these things have rustic sides sometimes. They come out with skinned up knuckles. It's like, we're not doing this again.
Yeah.
We have this conversation about it.
Yeah.
And, the housekeeper's one answer. The other answer is you give some breathing room to the mattress. So we make them wider so that there is plenty of room between the rails and stiles of the bed. And,
note to self.
And we also make sure that they're not too rough.
Yeah.
But they're difficult.
Yeah. I want to know if there are any questions from the audience for Bill. I hope everybody picks one of these up because your collection is beautiful, and it's a good thing I have 3 projects in Jackson and 1 in Montana because I'm kind of shopping right now.
Good.
And Holland Sherry is a company that I love because it's their quality is so beautiful, their textures are so fabulous. So congratulations.
So the guys from Holland Sherry I got to know through Design Leadership Network, and we became buddies. And over the years, we talked about maybe doing a product line together. So a couple of years ago, we agreed that now's the time. And so I took them 3 of them to Montana on a trip. They had never been to the West, really. So we had a great time, and we talked about materials of architecture. We talked about landscape. We talked about all these things and what influences our interiors. And we had conversations about texture and about what they have in their line and what they don't have in their line. Mm-hmm. So we eventually got to this place where we have fabric wall coverings, rugs, and leathers. And they all are inspired by the West in some way. And it was really fun to do. And
but tell all these people that you don't need to be doing a project in Montana or Jackson to use these materials.
That's true. That's true. They fit into a variety of styles of architecture, Spanish colonial, revival, those type of houses. beautiful textures for that type of architecture.
Right.
It could be a lake, it could be, on the beach, it could be wherever. But
Okay, good.
we were enthusiastic about the West, and that's where it started. It became palette and texture, and some of these fabrics you look at, and they're intentionally intended to have a heavier texture and tooth to them, so that they stand up to the architecture. But we wanted them soft to the touch.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting dynamic of working through the mills.
Comfy, cozy Western.
How we got there.
Yeah. Any questions? Valerie?
This is actually less of a question and more of a comment. For anybody that hasn't been there and is driving the 395 from LA up to Bishop or Mammoth to go skiing, there are two priceless museums along that road. In Lone Pine, there's the Film Museum, which is all the cowboy culture, but there is also the Museum of the Eastern Sierra, which is a trove of artifacts and like old mining lights and just, like all kinds of incredible things like basketry from the native weavers. So if you're ever up that way, these places are, they're tiny hole-in-the-wall museums and very much worth going to see.
I did a house in Lone Pine. I love Lone Pine, but I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, the Museum of the Eastern Sierra, I think, is the one that fewer people know about. But yeah, so put it on your list.
Great tip. Okay, any other, please.
So in the houses that have their log in the houses that have really big windows, they're log cabins, really tall ceilings, what special thing do you have to do for insulation? Because you can't put insulation in the walls, right?
Those houses are all built with the heaviest duty insulation in the walls you can do. There's also some of the glazing of the windows are triple pane glass. So that's the one that keeps it, the warmest and keep the condensation down. Because a lot of times if you don't have the heat dialed in properly, you're going to have condensation on the inside of the windows. So they've got to be insulated properly. And a lot of those homes have radiant heat. So the heat is consistent. It's coming from the floor. And sometimes there are systems that are backup that are, forced air systems, but really it has to do with keeping the heat right.
But wouldn't you say also that in some of these homes, they look like log cabins, but they have insulation sandwiched between the interior millwork and the exterior.
So a lot of times what you'll see is that if it's log on the inside and outside, they've split the log. They conventionally frame the house and insulate it and run electrical and run all the systems that you need to. Then they skin it on both sides. So it looks like it's been made. And some of them are truly log cabins. Like the one I was talking about that was a schoolhouse, and the one we just did for the cattle ranchers, those are true log cabins. But they have their unique challenges too. They draw flies, which you have to be aware of, that you're going to have to, have an exterminator. You're just going to have to deal with it. It's life. Those buildings have the larvae that stay in the wood for forever.
Is that right?
Yeah. So you do what you can to get rid of it, but it's part of the deal.
The insulation in the log cabin I did was old newspaper from the 1800s, and they would just paper the interior walls with newspaper, and most of it's gone, but there's still remnants of ads for women, Gibson girl hair and corsets and liniments that haven't existed for 100 years. It's pretty amazing to discover that. Any other questions for Bill? No?
Now you go get your book signed.
All right.
That is his. Even if you aren't doing a project that is Western in the way we've been discussing Western, the book is so inspiring for really how to combine modern and antiques and just envisioning a different way of designing that is very embracing of past and present and modernity. It's really. It's a beautiful book.
We also think a lot about art and accessories in these projects, and whether that could be Native American rugs from the 1920s to current modern paintings and photography. There's so many beautiful things that are based on the nature of our
Yeah.
country, whether it's the West, wherever you happen to be. We really explore the artistic opportunities in these houses as
And
well.
I think that's a good, lesson for all of us. Well, I won't take any more of your time or your time. Thank you so much for coming and joining me in conversation with Bill. He's a marvelous designer.
Thank you, Madeline.
And if anyone needs to know who his hairstylist is, he's happy to hand out that information at the end.